Uh, with me today, I have Todd Cochrane of Blubrry, the founder and CEO. Welcome to the show, Todd.
Hey, thanks for having me, Andy. Glad to be here.
So we've gone back and forth a little bit throughout the years with the podcasting 2.0 community. I did some addition to the Blubrry plugin. I had like an additional plugin that before you guys went gangbusters and added a bunch of features, I was adding some in there because I wanted to get into it and play with it. And I've been a Blubrry PowerPress user for forever, but I wanted to get in there and use these. So that's how we've come to know each other a little bit. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the service that you have. So you not only do podcast hosting, but you also have a power or a WordPress plugin that allows anybody anywhere, not even hosting on Blubrry, to create a feed, create their podcast, and do their podcast and show like that. But you also have a service called Podcast Mirror. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, first of all, by the way, thanks for doing that plug-in for a while. I
Oh yeah,
was
no
using it.
problem.
Yeah, I was doing it before we got all in too. The podcast mirror has been around, I think 7 or 8 years, and there's kind of a little bit of a story behind it. And what was going on was a certain hosting company was basically saying, "Hey, if you host your own RSS feeds on a $1.99 hosting account, you might be overloaded, and it's that way you shouldn't use your own .com, and
Hmm.
you should come over here and host on our platform so that you can." And it's kind of like, okay. And I asked the support team, how many issues comes up with people that have challenges serving their own RSS feed on .com. It was very few, but it
Hmm.
usually was someone that was on a fly by night hosting, and they just, the show got popular, and there was more reasons than just the RSS feed for them having challenges with their web host.
Sure.
So when we created Podcast Mirror, it was also a replacement for FeedBurner. FeedBurner had not been updated in years, literally. The Google team had not touched it. And I said, there's still a lot of podcasters on FeedBurner. I said, when we create Podcast Mirror, let's go ahead and make it an easy migration for folks on FeedBurner. Podcasters will have a place where it's kept updated. And the frank of it is the feeds are like lightning fast because
Hmm.
we basically put it on great infrastructure on Amazon, and so we had a lot of podcasters come over and use it, and some big podcasts that don't even host with us, which is kind of interesting because, they're a show that maybe have 1 million listeners.
Hmm.
And you can imagine that feed when it gets hit, when they produce a new episode, their sites are falling over.
Sure.
So folks came over and were using it, and it's exactly as it sounds. It takes an exact mirror of your current feed, copies it, paste it, and puts a Podcast Mirror URL on it. That's
Hmm.
essentially what it does. So we made that available for free, and for many years we thought, what can we do with this thing? And be honest with you, it become a little bit of a financial suck because, again, the biggest shows in podcasting were coming over and using it,
Sure.
and we're driving a lot of traffic. And when the podcasting 2.0 stuff came out, and basically I think I heard something on one of the podcasting 2.0 shows with Adam and Dave, and I thought we could put podcasting 2.0 tags, inject them into feeds that maybe come from SoundCloud or come from a non-participating podcast 2.0 host, primarily the one that was always, digging on me for,
Sure.
you need to have the RSS feeds over here because they hadn't adopted it, and they thought, "Oh, here's a little get back," right? So, we put a number of podcasting 2.0 tags into the channel level of the feed. So it's an optional thing. Hosts can turn those on, and if you have them, or let's say you already have the tags, we'll get technical here. If you have value for value or funding or OP3, we will use yours versus
Hmm.
using ours. So we look to see if the tag's there. If it's there, then we don't do anything on our side. Even if you fill out the information, your feed is still master.
Gotcha.
And then if you don't have podcasting 2.0 tags and you set the medium feature for a podcast or music or whatever, then we'll inject it at the channel level. So far, we're seeing some SoundCloud shows come over and use this. It's early days yet because the word's not fully out. Unless you're
Sure.
completely tied into podcasting 2.0, you may not even know about it.
Yeah, and that's I had originally used FeedBurner for that same reason. I was kind of using a cheaper web host, and I didn't really want to have my feed go away if it was hit too much, and so that's why I
Mhm.
was originally using FeedBurner. And then I don't even remember when I found Podcast Mirror, but I switched over to using that just for the same reason. And I knew that you guys were updating things as well as FeedBurner was not. FeedBurner had been stale
Right.
for years, and I don't like trusting Google with anything because you never know when they're gonna kill it. I mean,
That's
look
right.
at Google Podcasts, that they're what they're
Jeez,
doing with that. But
such a disaster.
yeah, yeah. So I had moved over and have really appreciated using the Podcast Mirror for that. So can you, now that you've added these extra tags, can you explain a little bit about what tags you did put in there?
Yeah, so we added the live. So live is in there. The ability to pending live end, all those features. I've got the Get Alby integration for value. So, and you can put your own um, funding points in there. It's not
Hmm.
just so it's the value for value piece is in there. The medium tag is in, so you can set podcast, music, video, film, whatever. The funding tag. Um, and you can also do credits. Credits is there at the channel level.
Okay.
So you can document role, co-host, guests, producers, etc. But again, well, actually, we make a note in it. Don't do guests because it's going to be at the channel level. It's not
Right.
going to be at the episode level. And we also obviously support redirect. So if someone wants to use OP3 or PodTrack or whoever for a redirect, they can enter their redirect.
Yeah. So
So
essentially, what you've done is you've taken any of the new tags that hosts don't support yet, and added, not any of them, but a lot of them, and added them in so people can easily go in and just add those into their feed.
yeah, and we're going to add some more. Again, whenever something makes sense from a channel standpoint, to put it in. Now, we've been asked to do this at the episode level as well. But it gets more difficult. It's real easy to kind of put that code in at the channel level because there's a good place to drop. You can put it
Hmm.
all in one place and insert it. But when it comes down to episodes, then it's a whole nother level of logic. And part of the
Right.
problem too it almost has to be done in post because if when you post an episode and we update the mirror feed, we won't know what to stick into the episode area until after we get the actual mirrored feedback. So uh, the episode piece is hard, really, really hard. So at this point, we're going to watch and see the adoption on the channel level. We did make a switch from free to paid. We we
Hmm.
we put the service at $60 a year. And that transition is happening now. Doesn't have to pay until sometime in
Sure.
January, but we're letting people know that we're moving to a paid service. And and those folks that are using a million page loads or million feed loads every couple days, it's still a great value for what we've offered. And at the same point, it'll give us the I guess in better words, the motivation to continue to support it and grow it. So, we weren't about to abandon it, but we
Hmm.
wanted to it was yeah, it was a bottom line number. I could see that
Yeah.
growing year after year.
Well, and I think that, I mean, that makes sense, because if you're willing to pay for hosting or whatever, like, this is just another addition to that, and it is a few dollars more a month, but at the same time you get those assurance that your feed is not going to go down, because, like you said, you've built it
Right.
on great infrastructure, so it's not going to go down like it would if you were using a fly-by-night web host. But then you also get those features, the new tag features that podcasting 2.0 is putting in there, and so really
Yep.
it is a great thing. And especially if there are a lot of podcast hosts that are adding tags, some faster than others. Blueberry is definitely one of the faster ones now. for adding things. I think you guys have a good majority of the tags in PowerPress, but you guys have a lot to update because you have the PowerPress plugin. You also have your publisher on your hosting side, but and now if things with FeedBurner or not FeedBurner, Podcast Mirror, you got to add those in there too. So, but I appreciate that you guys are moving so fast with that.
Luckily, and I talked to the devs about this, I'm like, "How much work, am I creating you?" So they basically said the back end work is some of the same code is just reused,
Hmm.
and some of the design work can be reused. So it isn't like we're having to do 3 separate builds of dev work. It is actually because it's 3 different pulls into 3 different platforms, but the once you get one adopted, then moving to the other 2 is pretty easy. So, we're about ready to do remote item, and we're going to so remote item will support pod roll at the channel level.
Sure.
But the problem is I won't be able to do a remote item at the episode level. So, value time splits, we'll see how that all
Hmm.
fits in, but I don't think I can do value time splits on Podcast Mirror. Just thinking at the top of my head, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that would be a tough one to do because again, you're at you'd be at the item level, so that would be a
Yeah.
tough one. But so for those of our listeners who don't know, I talked last week with Dave Jones, or last episode with Dave Jones, about value for value is a lot of the stuff we talked about during that episode. So not only can you do that with Podcast Mirror and with any of your hosts or any host that you're hosting on now, if they just add their Podcast Mirror to it, but you can do. You'd mentioned live. Can you talk just a little bit about what live is?
Yeah, so, a lot of podcasters are doing live today. They're doing, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, wherever, or X, or whatever we're calling it now.
Yeah.
So they're live streaming across a lot of different platforms, and with the Podcasting 2.0 apps at podcastapps.com, a number of them have supported the function, and I guess the best way to describe it is for the listeners, if you're listening to a one of your favorite podcasts and they have implemented this live function, and that app supports that. When they go live, what really happens is there's a signal that's sent out. It's a pod ping that says, "Hey, I'm live," or "I'm going to go live," and
Hmm.
then I am live. And the apps then can change the consumption and experience from on demand to actually watching or listening to the show live. So today, the implementation on that is a little bit technical, but um, if you're going to stream audio, a lot of the podcasters are doing like Shoutcast or
Hmm.
that type of a stream and doing an audio stream. For my show, when I do video, I it's very difficult to get an HLV output, which is basically a video live format, to get an HLV out of most services. So Restream.io is a company that I use to restream to multiple locations, but they don't support an HLV output. But the service I used to use called Wowza, Cloud Wowza does. So what I basically do is I send a video stream over to Wowza. They create an HLV. And what that ultimately does is allows people in the apps to watch the video version of the show. They don't have to
Hmm.
go on Facebook no more or Twitter or YouTube. They can actually watch within the podcast app. And the live piece really is in the end goal for the listeners. So we want them to know that in whatever app, and Podcast 2.0 app they listen to a show on demand, that for those that are live, they can either listen live as it's being streamed, or they can watch live as it's being video streamed. So it can go both ways.
Hmm.
And some do one to do. I do both because I have 2 RSS feeds, one for my audio show, one for my video show, and so they pick their poison on which way they want to engage. Now, it's still small numbers.
Oh yeah.
I was watching on the I think about a week ago, I got my biggest live audience on a podcast 2.0 app with about 20 people on an app that was
Nice.
watching it. Whereas the audio stream, which was kind of surprisingly was lower than the video stream, it averages 8 or 9. But again, depends on the type of day. So, we do the new media show at 3 o'clock Eastern. Most people are still at work,
Right.
so they can't really watch. And whereas my tech show is in the evening, and they can often tune in when it's in the evening after work. So again, it's just a fun way now to integrate into a podcasting app something that was once purely just on demand,
Sure.
which is still beautiful. That's how I listen to 99% of the shows, but still the ability to get an update, say, "Hey, this show's live," and click a button and the screen flips and you're either watching or listening to the live
Sure.
recording of
And
the show.
one of the things that I found that I really like, so I do stream to YouTube normally when I'm recording this, but I also do a live item also with a Shoutcast server for the audio. But one of the things that I've liked about, especially listening to the shows like Podcasting 2.0, when they go live, they usually go live a few minutes before they actually start the podcast episode. So in essence, you get a behind the scenes. You get Adam and Dave chatting about what's happening and testing things and singing and whatever else that they're doing. But it's cool because you kind of feel like you're part of the club, if you will. You get that
Yeah,
behind the scenes, which you don't get at the produced episode. So a lot of times, and then there's also chat rooms that you can attach to that and things like that. And so
that's
you
right.
can be with that, and also boostergrams, you can be part of the live show. If you're, I know, like when you and Rob do your new media show, you guys are reading off boostergrams that come in while you're recording, and so it provides the interaction that hasn't been there in the past.
And, and to be honest with you, if we go all the way back to when I started doing video, which was more than 10 years ago. I mean, I think we're using Blip, or can't remember who we were using. This is long before anyone else was doing live streaming. I did it for one purpose. I was in Hawaii recording at 8 p.m. Hawaiian Standard Time, which was literally 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern, 11 Pacific. And so I had Australians and people from New Zealand and Asia coming and hanging out with the live show, giving me feedback. So for me as a solo podcaster doing that tech
Hmm.
show where I didn't have a co-host, it gave me a little bit of a feedback, and it become exciting because someone would say something in chat, and I would be able to make a comment on it while we were recording the on-demand show that 99.99% of the people subscribed or followed. And that's the beauty of it too, is someone told me, "Well, you don't have many people watching your live show on YouTube," and I'm like, "I don't care." If it's just 1 or 2, cool.
Right.
I'm happy because usually they'll say something and it just gives a little engagement, and it's a little bit of a feedback loop, whereas now, with the ability to get boost in and people are watching on the app, actual podcast app,
Hmm.
and they can boost live, and that live boost comes in, you hear, "Boo," it comes in and you hear it over your headset. That's what that really does for a creator. And again, I'm kind of okay, so I'll just say it from a business standpoint. It keeps the podcaster motivated to do another episode
Hmm.
because, "Oh, someone's listening. I'm what I'm saying matters. I'm getting feedback, positive, negative, in between. I'm getting feedback."
Right.
So, I think that's what's missing so often in what makes a lot of podcasters pod fade is they do these episodes, they put them out, and it's crickets. They don't hear nothing from the audience,
Yep.
and they're like, "Who am I talking to a wall?" So if you're a listener of a podcast, if you want that podcast to continue, you want that podcaster staying motivated, email, boost, make comments wherever you can, give that content creator that positive feedback or negative,
Hmm.
give them
Feedback is
feedback,
feedback. Yeah.
and the feedback is more valuable than $100 bill.
Hmm. Yeah, I know for my podcast, when you're not live and there's not people interacting live, yeah, you're kind of waiting for feedback. You may or may not hear something, because it may take who gets out email client and writes an email right away. But if you're in an app and you can send a boost or even live and have
Yep,
them talk about your feedback right there live, they're more likely
yep.
to interact. And yeah, and as a podcaster, that's a great reward.
So I'm getting ready to go overseas for 3 weeks. I'm leaving the middle of next week. So I will not be Rob and I are still gonna do the new media show live, but my tech show, I'm gonna record probably while everyone's sleeping,
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna do live from Asia, and I know from my experience when I traveled to the Caribbean, this spring and spent a month in the Caribbean hanging out on the beach, that I get through my show actually quicker when I don't have an audience there and doing all this. So
Uh-huh.
there is extra overhead getting all prepped, make sure all the buttons are pushed. Whereas sometimes just like it's 3 weeks for me, the 6 shows I'll do while I'm on the road, they'll actually be easier to produce than the show that when I'm in the studio because all I got to do is put the headset on, grab the microphone, do my little show prep, hit record and go. And probably I'll save myself an hour in, but that's what being on travel and vacations
Right.
about is really to not have as much as complicated. So I can go back to just doing podcasting
Sure.
for a couple of weeks. And then I come back, then we'll get back in the studio and do live again.
Yeah, definitely. So the other tags you said, or you mentioned, the medium tag, which is something new. Not it's not new tag. It's a newer tag, but it's nice because you can say we that you have a music show, or not a music show, but music. This is music,
Yep.
and that's nice because we've seen a lot of these artists that over the years aren't able to make hardly any money, right?
Yep.
And so what they've done now is you can say music equals medium, and they can post their album up on a podcast host of sort and have an RSS feed with it, just like a podcast, but instead of podcast talking episodes, it's just the audio tracks.
That's
And
right.
then what that allows us to do with things like the value time split is have a music show like we've seen Adam do. And with doing that, then they can pay the artists as they play it, as people boost, and that's really cool. And so you said currently right now you don't have value time split in any of your interfaces. Is that something that you're looking to do?
Well, it'll be in PowerPress and in Blueberry soon. That's the last piece in this next dev development cycle that I'm waiting on. I got everything else demoed. We showed remote item, pod roll, the block tag, and then one other. And then, oh yeah, Valid Time Split's coming to Blueberry and to PowerPress. So working through, because that's a little bit of a complicated deal with the lookups and everything that's involved there. But the beauty about Podcast Mirror, going back to that, is an artist that's on SoundCloud today that can't, or any other platform, they can still put in their value for value Get Alby account or their whatever they're using for Lightning. And what will happen then is a platform like Blueberry or PowerPress that does support value time split will be able to use a podcast mirror feed to know where those satoshis go
Mm.
for that artist. And to me, I'm excited beyond music, to be honest with you. I think that the audiobook piece is going to be big. Films, because you just think, and if people think about podcasts, and the thing to remember is in the original old days, most people knew this, but now today most don't. You can actually attach a PDF
Oh yeah.
to a
Uh-huh.
podcast, to an episode as an enclosure. It's really not a podcast anymore, but the
Right.
enclosure will support a PDF. So you could put a newsletter as an actual episode. It could be an audio, then again, an audiobook, an actual chapter in an audiobook, film. It could be one feed, one video file, could be for film. So, and again, you can put in those data and get paid value for value. So I think this is where most folks that think just traditionally just about podcasts being podcasts,
Hmm.
even there's audio and video podcasts. Now we've got the ability to have these new genres: music, film, audiobook. I think there's a huge opportunity for let's say you're a writer, and the thing is, the actual people that produce books and sell them on Amazon or wherever they sell their books, they get to set the price of the book. They know what the cut is of the vendor they're working with. They pretty much know what their revenue is going to be from sales from a book.
Hmm.
Music artists get screwed. I mean, they just, they never know what their check's gonna be.
Yeah.
They're gonna get be paid a penny a listen or whatever it may be, but where this I always say I'd rather have as much of my money as possible come to me and not anyone else get a split.
Yep.
So an audiobook person can put up an audiobook, make it value for value, and they'll get essentially 99.9% of any boost that comes in via crypto, and they don't have to give a 20 or 15 or 10% cut. Now, there might be like us, we put a 3% fee on our people that use our stuff, but the fee is above and beyond. So if the
Sure.
podcaster, they're still going to get their full amount. So, or the audiobook. So I think though, if when you look at credit card processing fees and or PayPal and how much they take on those microtransactions, if they're sending you $100 on PayPal, you don't care about the transaction. But if they
Right.
send you a dollar,
Yeah.
then it doesn't work
Right.
for
You
fiat
lose most of
funds.
that money or all of
That's
that
right.
money.
Yeah. So where the crypto piece, and I know some people, I call it crypto stigmatism. I think if people get used to quit thinking about crypto and think about these as tokens,
Mhm.
as a listener, say, okay, you're gonna go to the arcade, you're gonna put $50 in a machine, you're gonna get so many tokens, and then you're gonna go play the games with your tokens that they've been issued. Most times they now put them on a card.
Yeah.
So what now in podcasting, it's the same. I use that same analogy because let's say you purchase 100,000 tokens, which would be 100,000 satoshis.
Mhm.
You buy 100,000 satoshis and you love a show so much, you say, I'm going to give them all of my tokens, or I'm going to give them 50,000 tokens. Or let's say, just go ahead and get your credit card out or your debit card and buy $100 worth of satoshis. And then you can spread that around. Yeah. You can say, oh, 25,000 for you, 50,000 for you, 100,000 for you. Yeah, and then you can divide and spread the wealth and support these creators. I've been astonished. We talked about a month ago that Blubrry creators have earned, and because we can back the number out because we take the 3%,
Sure.
so I can basically do the reverse math. 10 grand,
That's
10.
awesome.
You convert it. Yeah, it is awesome. And it's spread about a couple hundred shows. And I'm like, "That's 10 grand they would not have gotten had we not implemented this."
Mhm. Absolutely.
And, so for me, it's exciting, and I think if listeners think about Satoshis as tokens, quit thinking about the crypto. If you're just buying them to give them away, it doesn't matter, right? You're not gonna
Right.
convert it back to dollars. You're just gonna give the tokens away. Um, this is the analogy I'm trying to use with listeners to make them understand that if you love a show, love a content, love what the producer is giving this, and give this value back. So it works. And again, it's for the podcaster, it's usually not about the money. When 1,000 Satoshis come in, what is
Yeah.
that, 2.5 cents or something,
Yeah.
right? So
It's not a lot, but
I don't think about the money. I think about the engagement.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. Uh,
That's key.
yeah, it is. It is. And like you said, it helps keep podcasters doing what they do because they're getting
Yeah.
engagement. Yeah. One of the last
Yeah.
things that I really liked about about Podcast Mirror, and this is even before you updated it, but as a podcaster, it makes it really easy to switch hosts if you want. Because you don't need to go out and update. You don't need to put a 301 redirect in. You just go ahead and go into Podcast Mirror and update the feed that you are checking for Podcast Mirror. That updates everywhere else. And so that was crucial for me. I moved hosts not that long ago, and it was great because I was able to literally just go and put my new feed in, and it worked great.
It's amazing. We have at least one a week where someone has moved from A to B, and because they're not technical and they didn't read our document on how to, successfully migrate to another platform, either to us or away from us. Um, and this is one of the reasons why when someone leaves us and cancels their account, we keep all their data. It's
Hmm.
inactive in the background for 30 days. It's still there. They can come back, turn the switch on, and we can say, "Okay, you didn't get moved completely. Let's help you with all this," which doesn't happen very often when someone leaves us. but we see it more often than not when someone's on, maybe they're on something.com and they say, "Okay, I'm gonna rebrand, change the .com," and they don't do a redirect, and they cause themselves an extinction event. So, Podcast Mirror, like you said, for anyone that's considering moving, it's actually a great opportunity to say, "Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and put my master feed over here. We'll get everything redirected, wait 2, 3 weeks so that Apple and all the other services update, um, and then if I wanna move, you can move wherever you want,
Yep.
and there's no headache. There's all you gotta do then is once you've got established on the new site, you got your episodes all up, you give it that new URL, bam, it's done, it's switched,
Yep.
in an instant,
Yep. Well,
and people
Todd,
don't and if they've import I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
And if people have imported their shows right and carried the GUIDs over, which is another super technical term, the listener doesn't even know. It's
No.
completely transparent. It all looks the same, and they don't all of a sudden have to re-download 50 episodes. It's just, "Oh," and you don't
Yeah.
even have to tell them you moved.
Nope. You just switched and you continue publishing and they continue listening. So,
That's right.
well, I want to thank you for coming on today. Where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about Blubrry and where they can find Blubrry.
Yeah, Blueberry's, easy to find, blueberry.com without the E's. The E's were $2 million, so we didn't buy them when we started the company. And there's a whole story why the company's called Blueberry in itself, and, but anyway, it's blueberry.com. I'm Todd at blueberry.com. All the team members over there have an email account that start with their first name, so you can always find a team member easily that way. But again, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, we're a full service podcast host. About 70% of our customers use the WordPress PowerPress combination, 30% publish directly on our dashboard on our platform. And we give you a path to graduate. So if you really don't want to have a website initially and you just want to be on our dashboard, that's fine. But if you decide, hey, at some point I want my own website, we give all of our customers a free WordPress website and the ability to map a domain to it on the $20 and above plans. So yeah, all the information about the hosting platforms over at blueberry.com. This is what we really our company mantra is we provide the tools and services for you to succeed in and get out of your way
Hmm.
and let you build your brand. That's really what it's all about.
Yep. Uh, yeah, and I've like I said, I've enjoyed working with PowerPress for a while. Ever since I started my podcast, I've been doing podcasting since 2007, on and off, and even back then I was using PowerPress. So, yeah. So thanks again for doing that, and thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, and thank you for your nudging us to get this done with your plug-in and carrying us for a while.
Yep.
We definitely appreciate it.
Yep. You're welcome. All right. I am done recording.